all! Today we'll share with you a story about money, people, the land on which you're standing on, and more money.
That's right, it's time to learn about Singapore's labour policies. Okay, quick background. This is Singapore. We're in Southeast Asia, at a spot often known as the Dragon's Pearl. Singaporeans like to eat food, we like to live in big houses, and well, we like money.
This video comes to you in 3 parts. Part 1, Manpower Training Policies. Part 2, Wage Policies. And Part 3, Foreign Labour Policies.
Part 1. Imagine having a lot of money in this McDonald's paper bag. Lots and lots of money. Almost too much money in fact. In order to keep your money from ripping a hole in your McDonald's paper bag, you have to change to a stronger bag. You use the NTUC plastic bag.
The plastic bag is good, but soon it'll begin to stretch. You still want your money in one place, don't you? You upgrade to a leather bag.
Take all that money and times it by a bajillion times. That's the amount of money that goes in and out of Singapore every single day. Nice, eh? To keep that amount of money within Singapore, we need a strong bag. Or, in this case, a strong labour force.
Just like how we upgraded from a McDonald's paper bag to an NTUC plastic bag, we have to constantly upgrade our labour force. If we don't, all this beautiful money will go somewhere else. Not good.
That's why we have these 3 manpower training policies in place. The Continuing Education and Training Master Plan, Skills Program for Upgrading and Resilience, and the Productivity and Innovation Credit. In shorter bite-sized terms, the CET, SPUR, and PIC.
These policies ensure that Singapore's workforce remain up to date with the latest technology and industrial whatnots. This is done through training, workshops, and courses.
Fascinating! In 2008, the training capacity of CET centres was 22,000. Today, through the expansion via the CET Master Plan, that number has increased to 80,000. That's 4 times the original.
In view of the 2008 financial crisis, the SPUR program was put in place. In order to put employees who have, well, nothing else better to do, to better use, employers were encouraged to send them for further training.
Higher cost fee support was provided, so employees would have to spend lesser money in order to upgrade their workers. Employers would only have to spend 10% of the original price for higher quality diplomas and further training. That way, these companies will be armed with better plastic bags so they can take over the industries. I mean, higher educated employees, not actual plastic bags.
The PIC, on the other hand, provides tax reductions up to a whopping 150% for investments in the innovation value chain. This includes the support for investments in the training of employees. Grants were given to companies which display a greater potential for larger gains in productivity.
So many policies, so little time. So what do these 3 policies, the CET, SPUR and PIC, do to Singapore's economy? Time for a bit of economic recap.
Firstly, what is the AS curve affected by? 1. Cost of production, and 2. Productive capacity. Do take note, they are interdependent. When productivity capacity increases, the AS curve increases from AS0 to AS1. When cost of production decreases, the AS curve shifts down from AS0 to AS1.
All 3 policies, the CET, SPUR, and PIC, aim at increasing productive capacity at significantly lowered price. That also means a decrease in the cost of production. So what happens? That means that in the long run, the AS curve shifts both right and down.
Amazing! As you can see in the graph, this movement of the AS curve causes the general price level, or GPL, to decrease, and the real national income of Singapore, or RNI, to increase. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the overall desired outcome of the policies implemented, an increase in profit prices and RNI. Well, if you need some more stuff to be produced for the increased demand, you got to need someone to produce them. This causes labour, a derived demand, to increase due to the increase of output.
Now you know what happens in Singapore after these manpower training policies are implemented. But what happens outside Singapore? Well, after all the training and decreased cost of production, more exports can be offered at a much lower price.
If a branded made in Singapore water bottle costs 20 Singapore dollars here, and the same branded water bottle but made in Korea costs 30 Singapore dollars, which will you buy? Korean fanatics don't answer this. If you are a smart good importer, you will buy the one made in Singapore for the obvious reason, it's cheaper.
So, when Singapore exports are offered at more competitive prices, demand increases. This will affect the bazillion amount of money that we mentioned earlier. Remember the Brazilian amount of money? Good, you have been paying attention.
So, out of the bajillion amount of money going in and out of Singapore every single day, more money is staying here in Singapore instead of flowing out. This increases Singapore's balance of payment, and through the increase in Singapore's foreign exchange reserves, the supply of money within Singapore also increases.
According to the Keynesian transmission mechanism, this increase in money supply in Singapore causes a decrease in interest rates. Well, because less people need to borrow money, and well, the bank needs people to borrow money so they can suck out all the interest. Which then results in an increase in investments, where more people take advantage of the lower interest rates and borrow more money to invest. It's this increase in investments that will result in a much larger increase in the incomes of Singaporeans in the long run.
The increase in money supply will lead to an improvement in Singapore's BOP, which will lead to a possibility of a surplus of our BOP in the long run. Such surplus might result in appreciation in our Singapore dollar. Appreciation of Singapore dollar would exert an upwards pressure in prices of our exports, thus losing our price competitiveness. This would mean lower revenue for firms.
Part 2. Wage policies. See, one of the most wonderful things about working is your salary. Singaporeans love money, don't forget that. But having a pay rise is not very frequent, if it exists at all, in some people's life. Ever heard of your mother or grandmother complaining about how expensive things are these days? It used to cost 50 cents for a bowl of noodles, but now you have to pay at least $3 for a decent looking bowl of noodle.
That's what these three wage policies, the GST offset package, workfare income supplement scheme, and the CPF lifelong income scheme for the elderly are all about. It helps people like your mother and grandmother, and well, basically anyone in Singapore, cope with the rising cost of living.
Ever heard of the 2007 horror story? Legend tells of the horrible 5% goods and services tax, often commonly known as GST, which haunted every Singaporean consumer. In 2007, it evolved to level 7 GST monster and has inflicted its pain upon consumers all over Singapore ever since. End of story.
Well, lucky for us, following the increase of the GST to 7%, we were armed with the GST offset package. This was to allow us to cope with the steadily rising cost of living. GST credits, which translates to money for the non-economically educated such as yourself, are given out to households and those in the labour force.
During tougher times such as during the economic downturn in 2009, the amount of GST credits given and the senior citizens bonus was doubled.
Now on to the Workfare Income Supplement Scheme, or the WIS. This scheme supplements wages and CPF savings of older low-wage workers. This encourages current workers to continue working and retirees to come out of retirement instead of staying at home and doing nothing, to start working again. This so to become independent citizens and continue contributing successfully to society.
Low wages are no longer a hindrance to the elderly who are employed. The WIS scheme adds on to the existing wages and their CPF account, so the elderly will be able to gain a greater sense of independence instead of relying on the government solely for everything.
The CPF is a retirement fund scheme that caters to housing and medical needs and basic needs for the elderly. A percentage of one's salary is contributed by the employer into this fund to ensure that you can afford the cost of your basic everyday needs when you are retired.
CPF Life, on the other hand, provides a monthly payout for those who have signed up for it. This ensures that you won't, for some reason or other, squander all your CPF money off before you die. So, in other words, you can be sure that you won't be broke one day when you are older.
How encouraging! Time for the economic impacts again. The GST offset package is a type of expansionary fiscal policy. In other words, it's a governmental approach that requires the spending of money in order to drive the Singapore economy. A whopping $4 billion was spent as part of the scheme.
Well, if you can remember what was taught to you the past year, we'll look it up again. Government expenditure is a major factor affecting aggregate demand, more commonly referred to as AD. The increase in government expenditure causes the AD curve to shift to the right, which causes RNI to increase as well.
As expected, the GST offset package allows Singaporeans to have a slight increase in their disposable incomes in comparison to the rise of GST. This also results in a slight increase in the aggregate consumption. I mean, you have more money in your pocket, why not treat yourself to something nicer, right? This causes the AD curve to shift to the right just a tad more. This action causes a further increase in R&I, and in the long run, the GPL will also rise.
The implementation of the WIS also increases government expenditure as the government helps to support wage levels of older workers. This much needed assistance helped reduce a component of the cost of production. So, what happens when the cost of production falls? The AS curve shifts downwards, which results in the increase in R&I and the fall in GPL.
It's this reduction in cost of production that allows companies to continue employing these older workers. This not only helps to maintain the size of the current workforce, it also maximizes Singapore's resource and productivity capacity.
CPF Life falls under the category of a long-term fiscal policy. When the life bonus is given out, government spending increases, thus increasing AD.
Remember how an AS curve looks like? You don't? Don't worry, we are not your tutors, we won't kill you. Yep, I'm talking about the sections of the AS curve. See, there are 3 ranges: the Keynesian, classical, and vertical range.
If the AD curve is in the Keynesian range, GPL remains constant, R&I and employment increases. In the classical range, everything increases. How about if the AD curve is in the vertical range? GPL rises while R&I and employment remains constant because all resources are utilized. Easy peasy, rice and cheesy.
Still awake? Yes, we can see you because we have installed tiny cameras in each of your rooms. We're watching you as you watch us.
Part 3. Foreign labour policies. Among the 2.73 million people employed in Singapore, 33% are foreigners. Out of every 10 workers, 3 are not Singaporeans. To manage all these people, we need foreign labour policies. In other words, that's why we have the Scheme for Housing of Foreign Talent, SHIFT, Work Holiday Programme, WHP, and the S-Pass.
Like all people, foreigners need a place to live too. Jurong Town Corporation permits long and short-term employment pass holders to obtain HDB housing at commercial rates. With the assurance of the availability of affordable housing, foreign talents will consider Singapore as one of their top choices as their new home and workplace.
The WHP attracts foreign undergraduates and graduates to experience working and living in Singapore for a short period of time. Instead of working at home, with the same old boring community, day in, day out, you have the opportunity of a lifetime to go overseas to work and be paid. You'll be dumb not to accept such an offer.
Foreign professionals in Singapore have to apply for an S-Pass. This ensures that these workers are restricted to a fixed salary and are not taken advantage of by employers. S-Pass holders also get the extra benefit of having medical insurance.
All 3 of these policies aim at increasing the workforce by attracting foreign talents to Singapore. These successful policies increase Singapore's workforce, which allows an increase in output. In the long run, Singapore's R&I increases as productivity increases. This rise in productivity allows goods to be sold at much lower prices. With a constant AD and a rightward shift in the AS, GPL can decrease while R&I increases.
Despite these positive economical impacts, there are possible negative social impacts. Due to the ready availability of cheap foreign labour, wage prices are depressed. In economic theory, labour supply increases. However, lower skilled Singaporeans will suffer due to the preference of employers to hire cheaper foreigners. This might lead to an increase in unemployment rate of lower skilled Singaporeans, which would spell further negative social impacts.
By the Invisible Trade Service account, wages paid to foreign workers in Singapore would most probably move out of Singapore as the foreign workers send money back home. With the increase in the number of foreign workers in Singapore, the amount of money leaving Singapore increases. This would result in a worsening of the BOP.
This might result in a BOP deficit when international payments exceed international receipts. More bajillions are moving out of Singapore as compared to the bajillions coming and staying in Singapore. This reduces the amount of foreign reserves as they are now used to cover the deficit. Ultimately, the Singapore dollar will depreciate.
The lower value of the Singapore dollar would cause our exports to be cheaper and imports more expensive. Using common sense, more people will buy our exports and fewer Singaporeans will buy the more expensive imports, with cheaper local goods for sale. Provided that price elasticity of demand for exports and imports are elastic, net export would increase. As a result, Singapore's export revenue would increase.
All in all, Singapore has been doing a pretty good job in managing our labour policy. However, other sectors of the Singapore economy are also as important. In these 15 minutes, we hope you have been enlightened on the economic impact of Singapore's labour policies.
Please leave your comments below. And don't forget to thumbs our video up. You'll make us very happy.
Bye!